Hi, welcome to Crystal Fringe Geckos. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to build a bioactive terrarium for a leopard gecko. Now, all of these same steps in this process can be applied to building different bioactives for other arid species. However, today we are going to be looking specifically at how to build a bioactive terrarium for a leopard gecko. Now let's get into the video. For this build, I'm using a 20-gallon long Zilla critter cage. This cage has been pre-cleaned and wiped down with some rubbing alcohol beforehand. I'm going to foam in a custom background for this tank, and wiping it down with alcohol first will make sure the foam adheres correctly. To make the background, I'm going to use Great Stuff Gaps and Cracks Expanding Foam. When spraying the foam, I'm going to move side to side, spraying on an even layer. This is an expanding foam, so I'm not going to worry too much about the cracks in between the strips. Just getting an even layer down is what I'm focusing on. While the foam is still wet, I'm going to add any materials that I want to be a part of the background. This could be wood, rocks, leaves, or planter pots. Today I'm just using corkwood in this background. I am also going to foam in any gaps between the bark and the foam just to make it more secure and safe for the animal. This is what our background looks like so far with our foam and bark applied. I'm going to let this sit for 24 hours to cure, and then I will come back to cut and shape it tomorrow. For this curing period, I do keep the tank on its side so that it doesn't have to fight gravity when curing. To carve out the foam, I'm using a retractable box cutter. This is what is easiest for me to use because you can adjust the length of the blade quickly, but you can also use a razor knife or a razor blade to carve the foam. It is important to cut off at least this top layer of foam where it is glossy so that the silicone can properly adhere to it. If you would like to, you can also carve out indentations in the foam to give it a bit more texture. This is what the foam background looks like after it has all been cured and carved out. Now it is ready for our next step of siliconing. To silicone the background, I am using DAP acrylic latex in the color brown. To spread the silicone out, I'm going to be using a disposable putty knife. I'm first going to squeeze out the silicone directly onto the foam, and then I will spread it out evenly using the putty knife. When using the silicone, I like to work in small patches just to make sure that everything is nice and secure and snug for when it has to cure. Once everything is all spread out, I am then going to be adding our substrate on top. For this background, I'm first going to put down some coconut husk fiber. Since this does have larger pieces in it, I'm going to put it down first, and then I will add our finer substrate on top. I'm going to sprinkle around an even layer of this husk fiber, and then I'm going to add on our next substrate. On top of the coconut husk fiber, I'm going to be adding some dried peat moss. The same way that I put down the cocoa husk fiber, I'm going to put down the peat right on top, just a nice even layer. Once the peat moss has been spread out, I am going to pack it down nice and firmly to make sure that all of the fiber gets stuck into that silicone for curing. Now you may notice that I'm leaving this strip of silicone exposed here. That's just to make sure that when we move on to our next patch, the dirt from the finished patch doesn't get into the new silicone. And this is what the background looks like after everything has been applied. Now we're going to let this cure for 24 hours, the same way that we did the foam. Once everything has been cured and settled, then the next day I'm going to go in with a paintbrush or a sponge and very lightly tap off any of that excess substrate that's still on the background. For this process, I do put the tank back up in its upright position. I'm just going in very, very lightly and getting off that excess substrate, I'm also going to go in with a smaller brush to get out those pockets of substrate that are stuck in the corkwood. Remember, we don't want to do this too harshly because we don't want to get exposed silicone or foam patches. Just very, very lightly brushing off the excess. And this is what the completed foam background looks like. Next, we're going to move on to our bioactive layering and actually building our terrarium. First off, I'm going to put down a layer of hydro balls. I like to make the layer of the hydro balls at least 2 to 3 inches thick for really good aeration and drainage. I'm then going to add on top some cut-to-fit carbon filter pads. When doing the foam background, it can be a little bit tricky getting those to fit in those little grooves that we made properly. So I'm just going to take small strips after adding our big chunks in and really wedge those into the background, making sure that our substrate can't get through. For substrate in this terrarium, I'm going to first put down some coconut husk fiber, the same coconut husk that we used in the background. And then I'm also going to put in a mixture of coconut fiber and peat moss, and then I will mix that all together. Now I'm going to give the background and the substrate a good mist down to make sure that everything will stay in place. I'm going to take this opportunity to really mist in that corkwood and get any of the substrate that I missed before when using the paintbrush. Now that all of our bioactive layering is done, it's time to add decor. First, I'm going to add in a hiding area, and then I'm also going to be using an Exoterra Gecko cave as the moss box, along with an Exoterra water dish. Then I'm going to add in plants. I'm going to add our less heat tolerant plants to our side with the water dish as our cool side. So I'm using an assortment of bromeliads and succulents. I'm going to be adding most of our succulents where our heat spots are going to be, just because they're a little bit more heat tolerant. And then I'm going to add our silver squeals and our bromeliads to the other side, on the cool side where our water dish is. After all the plants have been added, I'm going to go in one last time and give it a really good mist down to make sure those plants are watered and in place. Next, I'm going to be sprinkling around some Reptibark chips. You can use any large wood chip for this. I'm just placing this on top of the looser substrate to make sure that the gecko doesn't eat it when it's hunting. Alright, I'm then going to add in our isopods, since this is a bioactive terrarium. For this build, I'm going to be using A. vulgare isopods, just because they're a little bit more heat and arid tolerant than some other more tropical types of isopods. I'm also going to be spreading around some sphagnum moss for them so they will have some moist pockets, and I'm going to be adding corkwood around our bromeliads for them and to protect the bromeliads from falling down. This is the finished product of the Leopard Gecko bioactive terrarium. One last thing that I like to do for my bioactives is to paint the background and the sides where the background is black with some black acrylic paint. This just helps to conceal the foam and make everything look really nice and tied together. This is a completely unnecessary step, but you can definitely do this. hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. If you have any questions about building Arid terrariums or other bioactive terrariums for your animals, you are welcome to leave them in the comment section below. If you would like to see more of our animals or our terrariums, you can check us out on Instagram at Crystal French Geckos. Thank you for watching. Bye!